On the morning of January 26, 2022, at approximately 6 a.m., emergency services received a distressing phone call. The caller identified himself as Dr. James Ryan. Sounding panicked, he reported that his partner was unresponsive and may have experienced a medical emergency possibly related to substance use. He stated that he had attempted CPR and urgently pleaded for paramedics to arrive as soon as possible. When first responders entered the residence, they found Sarah lying on the living room floor. Sarah Jane Harris was born on December 5, 1996, in the quiet and family-oriented community of Rockville, located in Montgomery County, Maryland. Her passion for science was evident even in elementary school, and her teachers began to recognize that this was no ordinary student. By the time she reached middle school, Sarah was excelling across all subjects, but it was the sciences that truly captured her imagination. In high school, she solidified her decision to pursue a medical career. Her academic record remained outstanding, and she was seen by educators and classmates alike as someone destined for great things. But Sarah wasn't just academically inclined, she was also remarkably self-reliant. At just 14 years old, she decided to take on her first job, working as a promotional representative at a popular local toy store. In addition to her academic and professional pursuits, Sarah had another side that people couldn't help but notice. She was strikingly beautiful, with a graceful presence and natural confidence that turned heads wherever she went. Her appearance led to frequent modeling offers, and she soon found herself involved in a variety of commercial photo shoots. She even signed a few advertising contracts, gaining recognition in local media. However, even as opportunities in the modeling world increased, Sarah never lost sight of her true goal: to become a healthcare professional. She managed to balance her growing modeling career with school and work, something few teenagers could have managed with such composure. Yet, behind her dazzling smile and driven personality, few knew the full extent of the internal struggles she was facing. By the time she turned 23 in 2020, Sarah was on the cusp of realizing her lifelong dream. She had completed most of her university coursework and had landed an internship at a high-end private dental clinic, a prestigious opportunity that promised to launch her into a promising medical career. On the surface, everything seemed to be falling into place. She had beauty, intelligence, and a powerful drive to succeed. It was only after certain events unfolded that Sarah's older sister, Rachel, who had always shared a close and protective bond with her, opened up to investigators about aspects of Sarah's life that had long remained hidden from view. According to Rachel, Sarah had started experimenting with substances at a much younger age than anyone had realized. Around the time she began working at 14, Sarah also started exploring the contents of the family's medicine cabinet, taking over-the-counter medications not for medical purposes, but in search of new sensations. This marked the beginning of a quiet but dangerous pattern. As Sarah grew older, she became involved with a group of peers who introduced her to prescription medications with stronger effects. These associations were concerning, but Sarah managed to conceal her involvement with remarkable skill. She continued to excel in school, kept up her job, and maintained her friendly, upbeat demeanor. The only person who knew the truth during those years was Rachel, who had made a solemn promise not to disclose anything to their mother. However, by the time Sarah turned 18, her emotional state had become increasingly erratic. Family members noticed extreme mood shifts. One moment she would be bursting with joy, the next she would retreat into silence or show signs of agitation. Concerned for her well-being, her family encouraged her to seek professional help. After a series of medical consultations and psychological evaluations, Sarah was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Sarah was prescribed medications to help manage her condition, and for a time she seemed to follow the treatment plan. But unbeknownst to many, she continued to use other substances alongside the prescribed ones. In 2018, during her college years, Sarah attended a popular rock music festival in a neighboring state. It was a chance to unwind, have fun with friends, and take a break from the pressures of academic life. It was there that she met Henry Peterson, a charismatic and engaging young man who immediately caught her attention. Despite the nearly 7-year age gap between them, the two connected on a deep level. Their conversations flowed effortlessly, and they soon exchanged contact information with the intention of staying in touch. For Sarah, who had previously been cautious and somewhat inexperienced in matters of the heart, Henry represented something new and exciting. He quickly became her first serious relationship, someone who seemed to understand her in ways others hadn't. Though their lives were different in many ways, their bond grew stronger over time, and they became nearly inseparable. Henry Peterson was a passionate musician who devoted his life to his craft. As a member of a rising rock band, he often found himself traveling from city to city, performing in various venues across the country. Touring was a demanding lifestyle, filled with long nights, studio sessions, and unpredictable schedules. Meanwhile, Sarah remained firmly grounded in Maryland, fully committed to her academic responsibilities and part-time job. Her aspirations of building a successful career in the medical field meant she couldn't just pack up and follow Henry on tour. Despite the growing distance between them, Sarah and Henry did their best to maintain their connection. They relied heavily on phone calls, video chats, and social media to keep the bond alive. During these conversations, they often talked about the future, dreaming of what life might look like once Sarah completed her studies and Henry slowed down with touring. For a time, these dreams kept their relationship alive. Henry would travel to see Sarah whenever he could carve out a few days, and Sarah always made space in her busy schedule to spend time with him. Their reunions, though brief, were filled with affection and shared memories. But the lack of consistent presence gradually began to wear on them. Emotional strain crept in, and the relationship started to feel more like an effort than a joy. Eventually, after roughly a year and a half of trying to make things work, they came to a difficult but mutual decision to part ways. Henry was the one who initiated the conversation, expressing concern not only about the long-distance nature of their relationship, but also about the emotional challenges Sarah was facing. Her unpredictable mood shifts and continued reliance on medications had become more apparent to him, and he felt increasingly helpless watching someone he cared about struggle from afar. In later conversations with friends, Henry shared that his feelings for Sarah had never faded. He still cared deeply for her and wished things could have worked out differently. However, he also understood the importance of prioritizing mental well-being for both of them. While their romantic relationship came to an end, their bond never completely dissolved. Even after the breakup, he was someone she could count on to listen, offer guidance, or simply be there during moments of difficulty. In early 2020, as Sarah continued to focus on her studies, she began experiencing discomfort due to impacted wisdom teeth. The pain had become difficult to ignore, and she scheduled an appointment at one of the city's most reputable private dental clinics. By a stroke of luck, her case was personally overseen by the clinic's founder and chief specialist, Dr. James Ryan. Dr. Ryan was well known within the local medical community. A seasoned dental professional with decades of experience, he had built a sterling reputation for providing top-tier dental care and operating a clinic that stood at the forefront of innovation. His schedule was normally booked for months in advance, making it highly unusual for a new patient to land an appointment with him. During her treatment, Sarah mentioned her academic background and aspirations, sharing that she was currently seeking internship opportunities within the healthcare field. Dr. Ryan appeared impressed by her ambition and offered her a chance to work as a part-time assistant at his clinic. After giving it some thought, Sarah accepted the position. She began working under Ryan's supervision, gaining practical experience while continuing her studies. From the outset, he was respectful, engaged, and encouraging. He checked in on her recovery even outside of work hours, always showing an interest in her well-being. However, Dr. Ryan started giving her compliments more frequently, often inviting her to dinners or social gatherings under the pretext of professional networking. Initially, Sarah was focused on her goals, and the idea of becoming involved with someone nearly twice her age didn't appeal to her. Yet, over the following months, the professional lines began to blur. Dr. Ryan's charm, generosity, and persistence wore down her resistance, and by early 2021, the two had begun a romantic relationship. They soon moved in together. Sarah relocated to Dr. Ryan's spacious and elegantly furnished home, which reflected his success and financial security. At the time, James Ryan was 47 years old. His dental clinic had become one of the most elite in Montgomery County, recognized not just for its advanced treatment methods, but also for its luxury service and immaculate presentation. Appointments were expensive, but patients believed the care they received was worth the cost. When Sarah began dating Dr. Ryan, many of her friends were impressed. It seemed like she had found stability with a successful and supportive partner. Her lifestyle took a dramatic turn. Less time at the clinic, more time traveling, shopping, and enjoying the comforts she had once only dreamed of. Yet, she continued to receive her regular salary despite rarely appearing at work. But the reality was more complex than it seemed. Sarah had long been dealing with personal challenges, including her past struggles with mental health and dependency. Over time, Sarah became more reclusive. Tragically, on the morning of January 26, 2022, emergency services received a distressing phone call. A man on the line identified himself as Dr. James Ryan. His voice was panicked as he reported that his partner was unresponsive and might have suffered a medical emergency related to substance use. He explained that he had tried performing CPR and was pleading for paramedics to arrive quickly. Upon entering the home, they found Sarah lying on the floor of the living room. She appeared fragile and pale, but there were no outward signs of injury. Despite continued resuscitation efforts, it was clear that she had passed away several hours before the call was made. Dr. Ryan was visibly shaken, repeatedly stating that she may have experienced a reaction to medication or an accidental overdose. At that point, the full picture was still unclear. The days that followed were filled with mourning, questions, and reflection. Following the tragic discovery of Sarah Harris's unresponsive body, investigators were immediately tasked with uncovering the events that led to her passing. From the outset, authorities considered two primary explanations, one being the possibility of intentional self-harm, and the other, an accidental overdose. Given the circumstances at the scene and the testimony provided by her partner, Dr. James Ryan, early indications leaned toward the latter. According to James, it appeared that Sarah may have consumed a dangerous combination of substances that ultimately overwhelmed her system. In his official statement, Dr. Ryan described the final hours he spent with Sarah. He said that the two of them had spent the evening at home watching television together, something they did frequently to relax after busy days. As the clock neared midnight, she mentioned that she had work the following morning and needed to get some rest. James then excused himself and headed upstairs to their bedroom, expecting that Sarah would join him shortly after the movie ended. But when he woke up the next morning around 5:30 a.m., he noticed that Sarah had never come to bed. Initially assuming she had fallen asleep on the couch, James went downstairs to check on her. Sarah was lying unresponsive on the floor beside the sofa. Alarmed, James quickly assessed the situation. Drawing on his medical training, he sprang into action without hesitation. He carefully rolled Sarah onto her side, checked her breathing, and cleared her airway. Realizing the severity of the situation, he began administering CPR. Despite his efforts, there was no response. Recognizing that immediate intervention by emergency professionals was needed, he called 911 and explained the gravity of the situation. Throughout the call, he remained on the line, continuing CPR until first responders arrived. Once paramedics were on the scene, it became clear that Sarah had likely passed away several hours earlier. Though there were no visible injuries or external signs of trauma, she appeared extremely underweight and frail. Dr. Ryan, visibly shaken and emotional, explained to paramedics that he suspected Sarah had taken a strong anesthetic, possibly one intended for clinical use, and may have combined it with other medications. According to Ryan, Sarah had been quietly taking medication from the clinic for personal use. He admitted he had known about it but had refrained from reporting her, not wanting to jeopardize her future or involve legal authorities. Instead, he said, he had taken it upon himself to care for her at home. He described administering IV fluids to help clear her system, attempting to reduce the harmful effects and keep her hydrated. Dr. Ryan also told investigators that he had only learned the full extent of Sarah's struggle after she moved in with him. It was then, he said, that she opened up about her history. She reportedly explained that she had been living with bipolar disorder, depression, and severe anxiety since adolescence, and that certain medications were the only thing that helped her maintain emotional balance. She had never intended to become dependent, but over time, her need for relief from psychological stress outweighed her caution. Toxicology reports supported parts of Ryan's account. The medical examiner found that Sarah had indeed passed away due to a combination of multiple powerful substances. The dosage levels were significant enough to cause heart failure. There were no bruises, cuts, or signs of external force, but the autopsy did reveal evidence of prolonged intravenous use. Her veins were scarred, consistent with long-term self-administered treatment. Authorities briefed family on what had happened and shared the timeline James Ryan had provided. Tina was suspicious. In interviews with law enforcement and reporters, Tina spoke candidly about her deep reservations. She said that from the start, she had sensed something unsettling about the older man who had inserted himself so quickly into her daughter's life. While Sarah had always described their relationship as professional at first, Tina was convinced that James had manipulated the situation to his advantage. She was adamant that her daughter had not been in love with him and believed that James had used his influence to gain control over Sarah's life. According to Tina's version of events, the two had first crossed paths 2 years earlier, when Sarah visited Dr. Ryan's clinic for a dental procedure involving her wisdom teeth. She had gone there based on a friend's recommendation, expecting nothing more than standard care. But Tina believed that Dr. Ryan had taken a personal interest in Sarah from the very first appointment. She alleged that he began calling her regularly, sending messages, and offering her favors under the guise of professional mentorship. Tina also recalled that shortly after learning Sarah was seeking a medical internship, James extended a generous offer for her to work at his clinic. Sarah accepted the offer enthusiastically, believing it could be a major stepping stone for her career. Still, Tina noticed subtle changes. Over time, Sarah spoke less about learning and more about the clinic. She began to prioritize social outings with James and his circle, though she continued to deny any romantic involvement. Their professional rapport gradually transformed into what appeared to be a close friendship, though Sarah remained guarded when discussing her personal life with her mother. That changed dramatically as New Year's Eve 2021 approached. Tina recalled that Dr. Ryan invited Sarah to an upscale restaurant for a celebration. That night, in a grand public gesture, he surprised her with a diamond ring that reportedly cost a significant amount of money. During that dinner, James told Sarah he loved her and asked her to move in with him. Until then, while he had given her lavish gifts, this was the first time he had made such a direct romantic proposal. Tina was heartbroken. She believed her daughter had been pressured into a relationship she wasn't ready for, and possibly didn't truly want. But Sarah, perhaps feeling caught between gratitude, confusion, and a desire for stability, agreed to move in. For Tina, this marked the beginning of her daughter's isolation. She felt increasingly shut out of Sarah's life, and though she tried to stay in touch, she sensed a growing emotional distance. Without expressing much hesitation, Sarah agreed to move in with Dr. James Ryan, seemingly embracing the lifestyle he promised, a life filled with comfort, luxury, and a sense of stability that was difficult to resist. Within just a few weeks of settling into his upscale home, James presented her with a lavish gift, a brand new Mitsubishi Prius. He included Tina and her other daughters in his acts of generosity as well, taking the entire family on luxurious vacations, footing the bill for travel, accommodations, and fine dining. These experiences were, for many, once-in-a-lifetime opportunities, and for a brief period, they helped foster the illusion that James's affection was sincere. His charm, combined with financial generosity, caused the Harris family to let their guard down. Not long after Sarah had moved in with James, he began noticing that certain medications from the clinic were missing. At first, he wasn't sure who was responsible, but eventually, he caught Sarah with the medications in her possession. He kept the incident private, an act that raised serious questions about his judgment and priorities. According to later accounts, Sarah allegedly warned James that if he attempted to limit her access to those medications, she would leave him. Afraid of losing her, and perhaps unwilling to face public scrutiny or professional consequences, he allowed the situation to continue. Tina held an even more troubling belief. She suspected that James had played a direct role in introducing her daughter to injectable substances in the first place. Though Sarah had previously struggled with mental health and self-medication, Tina thought James had enabled or even intensified those habits. One conversation in particular haunted her. During a trip to Hawaii, while the family was sharing drinks one evening, James allegedly let something deeply unsettling slip. He told Tina that the first time he had seen Sarah was years earlier, when she was still a teenager, dressed in costume as a store mascot at the toy shop where she worked. At the time, she was just 15 years old. James reportedly admitted that even then, he had been captivated by her appearance. Tina interpreted this as an unhealthy fixation, one that had lingered for years until he eventually found a way to act on it. After Sarah's passing, authorities did conduct a search of the home she shared with James. The items that were found appeared to corroborate Dr. Ryan's version of events. Investigators discovered multiple prescription medications, not just in the main bedroom but also in Sarah's purse, her nightstand drawer, and even the glove compartment of her car. These findings suggested that Sarah had been storing and potentially using these medications regularly. Also uncovered at the scene were various medical supplies, discarded wrappers from syringes, tourniquets, empty IV solution bags, and used ampules. These items painted a picture of ongoing, self-administered medical use. Toxicology results confirmed the presence of multiple controlled substances in Sarah's system, consistent with what was found at the residence. Investigators concluded that she had administered the substances herself shortly before her passing. With no indication of external injuries or signs of foul play, authorities officially determined that her death was the result of complications from a combination of powerful medications. While police examined her phone as part of their standard procedure, they did not confiscate it for long-term analysis. However, during the initial review, they came across messages that offered heartbreaking insight into Sarah's emotional state. In her last few days, she had reached out to Henry, her former boyfriend and longtime confidant. The messages were emotional and heavy. She spoke openly about her ongoing depression and feelings of hopelessness. In one particularly haunting message, she hinted that she was close to giving up, that she was tired of fighting her internal battles and was contemplating making a permanent decision. Based on this communication and the evidence at the scene, investigators ruled out foul play. They viewed her messages as a clear indication of intent, interpreting them as confirmation that Sarah had taken her own life. As a result, Dr. Ryan faced no criminal charges. To Sarah's family, however, this outcome felt like a devastating miscarriage of justice. They didn't see Dr. Ryan as a passive witness to Sarah's struggles, but rather as someone who had enabled and perhaps even encouraged harmful behavior, while shielding her from the help she truly needed. They began any possible evidence they could use to bring public attention to Sarah's story. Tina returned to the police department to provide a more detailed account of her daughter's final year. That October, James invited both Sarah and Tina on a vacation to Florida. While the trip seemed generous on the surface, Tina noticed several concerning signs. Despite the warm, sunny weather, Sarah consistently wore long sleeves, even on the beach. A few days after they returned home, Tina received a call from Sarah. She sounded disoriented, speaking in slurred sentences and unable to stay focused. Alarmed, Tina rushed over to James's home. What she found confirmed her worst fears. Sarah appeared dazed and barely responsive. Tina was deeply shaken. While looking around the room, she spotted numerous medical items that didn't belong in a non-clinical setting. Discarded ampules, empty vials, syringes, and other supplies scattered across the countertops and tables. Concerned that these materials might be removed or hidden later, she took photos to document what she had seen. These images, along with her personal testimony, became part of the family's effort to seek the truth. To them, the case was far from closed. Though the legal system had made its determination, the Harris family believed there was much more to the story. Questions left unanswered, behavior left unchecked, and a young life cut short in a way that might have been preventable. On December 13th, the disturbing pattern repeated itself. Once again, Sarah called her mother in a confused and disoriented state, speaking incoherently. Tina rushed to her daughter's side, only to walk into an even more alarming scene. Sarah's weight had dropped to a dangerously low level. Her arms were marked with multiple injection sites, and beside the couch where she lay stood an IV stand. Scattered across the floor were vials and ampules containing unknown substances. As before, Tina was stopped from calling emergency services or alerting authorities. She was told Sarah had simply undergone IV therapy for dehydration. Desperate to help, Tina wanted to take her daughter home by force, but Sarah warned that if she did, she would cut off all contact with her family. Following Sarah's tragic death, her mother and sister took possession of her phone and laptop, hoping to uncover evidence linking Dr. James Ryan to what had happened. While going through Sarah's messages, they found a trail of disturbing exchanges between her and Ryan. The conversations frequently referenced specific medications, including powerful anesthetics and tranquilizers. For the final 6 months of her life, Sarah had barely been showing up at the clinic. She was reportedly under the influence much of the time, and Ryan allegedly avoided letting others see her in that condition. Sarah's sister printed out all of her text messages with Ryan, in which they openly discussed the use and delivery of prescription drugs. She paired this documentation with photos their mother had taken during her visits to Ryan's house and brought the evidence to the police, demanding that a criminal investigation be opened against him for intentional harm resulting in death. Although the evidence was largely circumstantial, it was compelling enough to prompt law enforcement to re-examine the case. Investigators soon discovered that Ryan had not only been supplying Sarah with prescription medications at her request, but had also turned a blind eye to her taking drugs directly from the clinic without authorization. On March 22, Dr. James Ryan was arrested and formally charged in connection with the death of his young partner. While he admitted knowing about Sarah's dependency, he insisted that he had the situation under control. Ryan claimed he had been trying to help her recover, administering IV treatments to combat dehydration and attempting to regulate her intake. Still, on the night that claimed her life, he failed to intervene in time. On August 25, 2023, James Ryan was convicted of second-degree homicide. The court concluded that he could not have been unaware of the potentially fatal consequences of his actions. He was also found guilty of unlawful possession of controlled substances. Ryan was sentenced to 45 years in prison, with the possibility of parole.